also a graduate assistant to Dr. Eric Boyd, where we're doing research looking at professional athletes that have now transitioned into entrepreneurship. And then something that I'm doing now, I'm currently competing for triathlon. So that's something that I love. And I love competing and getting workouts in, and hopefully I get to continue that.
Great. Thank you, Hayley. Finley, we're going to jump to you.
Awesome. Hey guys, my name is Finley Funsten. I played field hockey at Davidson College in North Carolina. Also, go Cats. A highlight of my playing career, I guess, would be that I still claim the Davidson field hockey all-time scoring record. So that's kind of fun.
Nice.
Currently, I am an owner of MADabolic, which is a strength and conditioning gym headquartered in Charlotte. And I also manage both of our facilities, and I'm a sports nutritionist on the side.
Great, thank you. Landon, we're actually going to go to you because Tolu's energy is hard to match, so we're going to let her bring up the rear. So Landon, go ahead.
Thank you for not making me follow. Yeah, so my name is Landon Funsten. I played football at Davidson College at the same time as Finley. Unfortunately, we did not put too many W's in the win column. So while every win was a highlight, on the personal side, being named an All-American was a very cool experience for me. I am a co-owner of MADabolic Gym along with Finley. But for my full-time job, I lead a partnerships team for a software company that specializes in craft beer technology. So that's my quick story.
Perfect. And Tolu, round us out here.
Let me stop. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tololupe Omokore. Everybody calls me Tolu. I was born in Nigeria, raised in Maryland. I went to the University of Central Florida. Everybody's saying go Cats, go Knights. Sorry, Hayley and Finley, I'm sorry. But my highlight, I was a student athlete. I played basketball. I guess it would be when I grabbed 20 boards in one game my freshman year. And mind you, I'm 5'11", but I jump and I play like I'm 6'3". So 20 boards is pretty impressive. Right now, I'm the host of Invisible Women in Sports, and that's through my GA position, ISSJ, the Institute for Sports and Social Justice. So I have a Zoom cast, and we actually have an episode tomorrow. We'll drop the link for y'all to tune in if y'all want to see more. But I really enjoy doing that and just speaking to a lot of women in color in different sports industry and getting to know, their journey and their challenges. So, yeah.
Great. So much of what all of us have experienced has been through sports, so many life lessons. Hayley and Tolu, you most recently transitioned from being student athletes to just being students. Can you talk a little bit about what that transition was like? Maybe one thing that you learned that was hard, and one thing that made that transition easy is maybe something you've learned from being a student athlete.
I'll go. To start it off, I've gained a lot of weight. Actually, that part was tough, not being able to work out and wake up at 6 a.m. for weights and more than a mile. So that I don't miss, but I do miss getting in shape. So I will say that's been a challenge for me, actually. But other than that, so I was a communication major. So now this is a program where we're getting our MBA. So it was tough, transition from being a student athlete in a communication field into now taking classes like stats and econ. And that was tough. But the thing that helped me, pass by was my cohort, and it's 21 of us. So I took that same mentality that I was, I had a team. There was 16 of us on a team. So now it was just 21. I had 21 new teammates, and they was the one that helped me, get through the tough times in the classroom. So I will say I'm grateful for my cohort, including Hayley here. She's definitely helped me out get through some classes, but it's been a tough transition. But again, I had my family and friends, teammates still by my side, and people to just help me out.
I guess I'll piggyback off of that. Same with Tolu. To be honest, my transition after swimming was a little rough for me. Since I've always been a very motivated person, it was kind of hard to find that motivation outside of swimming. And I always thought throughout my swimming career that I would be so excited to end my swimming career. But once it happened, I was kind of lost, and I kind of lost who I was because I'd been swimming for 17 years and I got a little burnt out. But like 2 or 3 months later, I was like, well, what do I do now? So I think the hardest part was finding that passion outside of swimming. So I think, and kind of finding my way. So like kind of going to grad school was kind of my saving grace because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So coming into a program, like Tolu said, with 21 teammates, with 21 people supporting me, it was really, really great. And I was able to find my passion in athletic compliance, which is something that I'm doing now, as well as kind of transition into triathlons, which is something that's easy for a swimmer because that's kind of the part where everyone struggles with, the swimming part of triathlons. So I think finding that passion outside of swimming is something that is really, really important once you're done with athletics.
Hayley, I'm going to stick with you. You talked a little bit about transitioning from undergraduate to graduate. Can you talk a little bit about what the difference between undergraduate and graduate school is? Maybe why you chose to go to graduate school directly from undergrad, because we're talking to high school students who their first step will probably be maybe an associate's degree and then a bachelor's degree, and how those are a little bit different from a graduate degree and what that looks like.
Yeah, 100%. So undergrad for me, I thought was a little bit easier because I went the marketing route, and that was something that I was actually really interested in doing, and I was going to do sports marketing, and I was all gung-ho doing that. And then I ended up doing an internship in undergrad, and I realized that it just was something that I wasn't interested in. So after that kind of happened, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? So I think undergrad for me was, I was really, really focused on swimming, and not that I wasn't focused on school, but it was just kind of secondary for me. So I just kind of assumed that I was going to just get a job after college, and I just assumed it was just going to be a job. I didn't know what job that was going to be. So once I was introduced to grad school and kind of earning my MBA as well as earning a master's in sports business, I think that's kind of how I went to that route. And for me personally, what helped me realize that I wanted to go from undergrad to a master's program is that I knew that I didn't know that I was going to take, like, so to get into graduate school, you have to take a bunch of tests and do all that stuff. So I wanted to be in that school mindset. So I think going from undergrad to getting my master's was the smartest thing for me, because I was able to learn a little bit more about myself when I wasn't training for something. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, going straight from undergrad to graduate school.
Great. I'm going to jump to a question that we have from our attendees. So Caroline asked, and Finley and Landon, I'd love for you to jump in as you're further along in your careers, but from your experience, how do you deal with a coach who is hurting your passion for your sport? So, you know, maybe a coach who's not being supportive or isn't encouraging. How did you manage that if you experienced that in your career, and any advice that you have for this question from Caroline?
Lan, you want to jump in? Do you have?
Yeah. So I had in high school and college, I had two very, very different coaches, both kind of crazy in their own way. My high school coach was very unsupportive, and I played on a high school team that sent 9 players, myself included, to Division I programs. And Davidson, look, for those of you that have heard of Davidson out there, I love it. Keep grinding, probably through Steph Curry, and that's okay. Davidson's not a big name, right? So the guys that were going to NC State and Navy, University of Richmond, those are bigger name programs. And so, you know, as someone who, you know, had the ability to go play in college, but was, yeah, there were definitely times where I felt like I was a second tier athlete in college, and that was really hard. And so, you know, for me, that was, in order to stay, you know, maintain my passion, it really came through relationships with my teammates, because those are the people that are with you day in and day out. And those, not just from a relationship standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint, from a teamwork standpoint, and a collaboration standpoint, well beyond sports. Those are skills that really stick with you, not just in a professional sense, but also in a personal sense. And that's really where you're going to find happiness, because someday you're going to find a boss that hurts your passion too. And so you've got to find other ways to cope with that. Moving into college, my coaching experience was the exact opposite. I had a coach who I was very, very close with, and we had a great relationship, and he recruited me hard, and I performed well on an individual basis, but he got fired with 2 games left my senior year. And, you know, we won 13 games over 4 years. So with him, it was less the passion. He didn't dampen the passion for the sport. It was more, losing sucks. Nobody likes to lose. And whether it was his fault or the player's fault or some combination thereof, it was still hard to continue to push through defeat and losing. And I think, the contrary to my high school experience, a lot of the members of the team kind of looked at the coach and said, "This is your fault. You're not competent." And so it was more. Whereas in high school we rallied as a team. In college, I think that the coach caused a little bit of a fracture within the team at times. But nevertheless, you still have to find a way to lead through it. You have to, find your own outlet and realize at the end of the day that the best way that you can affect success for others is to, strive for success yourself and lead by example. But there are a lot of life lessons that come from learning through defeat and managing to cope through that.
I'll just jump in quickly because that was great. But I was fortunate enough. I had my high school experience with my primary sport, field hockey, both club and high school. I had wonderful coaches, and I also really loved my coach in college. So I never dealt with that struggle, but I will say, because I had such a positive experience with my coach in high school leading into college, selecting a school and a program based on, not entirely based on, but the coach was a really, really, really big part of my decision. And that was very intentional. And a lot of the programs that I kind of nixed pretty quickly, even if they were awesome programs, were because I did not get a great read on the coach, nor did he or she garner the most glowing reviews from kind of the field hockey world. So that was a really big component to my collegiate decision, and I'm really glad I went with that kind of gut choice, because the coach definitely plays a huge role in your experience as an athlete.
Yeah, Landon and Finley, you both sort of talked about some of the things that you've learned and experienced. Landon, you mentioned you learned to lean on your teammates, and you might have to learn to deal with a difficult boss or a difficult coworker. I would love for the group, and open it up and feel free to jump in. Maybe we start with you, Tolu, knowing that you've had some injuries throughout your career. What's something that you learned while being a student athlete, whether in high school or in college, that you've sort of taken into, Hayley and Tolu, for you for graduate school, and Landon and Finley for you in your professional career? Is it mental toughness? Is it overcoming adversity? I'd love for you to talk about how you've sort of taken those lessons from sports and transitioned them into what you're doing currently.
Okay, yeah, that was a good question. So I tore my ACL, both of my ACLs. My left one was my senior year of high school, right before I was coming to UCF. And that was tough because I'm just like, UCF don't want me no more. Oh my God. And it was like, no, we still want you. Come on. And so that was tough, but I did what I had to do, was doing therapy back home in Maryland. And I got to, do some therapy at UCF in the summer, and then was able to play towards the end of the season. That was my freshman year. So junior year of college was more devastated because it was just like, not again. And it was the other knee. And that really, because I told myself, if I ever get injured again, I'm done. That's it. Because the therapy was crazy. So that happened my junior year, and it was tough on mental health. On me, it was tough. And I'm usually a positive person, if you guys can see a little bit. But that really took a toll on me. But my teammates, I'm bringing it back to my teammates, because that's who you're around all the time, helped me out and encouraged me to keep going. And because I was injured, that didn't give me a reason to just stop. Yeah, of course I couldn't be on the court, but I was doing other things. So that gave me the opportunity to go represent UCF in the NCAA Student Athlete Forum in DC back in 2017. So because that injury that happened, that was a blessing in disguise, I was able to do different things. I was also able to volunteer Boys and Girls Club. Again, I'm doing all of this stuff because I can't be on the court, but I'm also doing something else with my time. I'm just not sitting there and just feeling sorry about myself and going to therapy, but I'm also finding something else. What could I be doing right now to use my time? And like I said, it's tough going through any adversity, but it's also good for you to have somebody in your corner, whether it's the team, coaches, family, who can uplift you. So yeah, my advice to you, everybody watching is don't give up if something gets hard. It's going to get hard, but you're definitely going to get through it. It's just a matter of how you're going to get through it and what you're going to do about it. So that's just my thing. And it carried over to where I'm at now in a DeVos program, just that mental toughness and being like, okay, this is what I got to do. I've been here before. Like, I have to do this. I have to buckle down. So that blessing, what's it called? That injury was definitely a blessing in disguise for me.
Hayley, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely had a different experience than Tolu. Thank gosh I never got injured, but I had I had different kind of adversities, I guess, throughout my athletic career. I just like to preface this: being a student athlete is extremely hard, and that's something that you do have to prepare yourself for. I mean, I think for me, what I learned most of all is that mental toughness, even same as Tolu said, just in a different way. So every single day you have to go to practice and you have to bring your 100% all if you want to make a difference in that program and if you want to add value to that program. So I think that mental toughness and that physical toughness kind of prepares you for anything that you're going to do after your athletic career. For me, I mentally had to prepare every single day for practice. I had to prepare to do that next rep. I had to mentally prepare to support my teammates when personally I wasn't performing as well as I could. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I learned was, even if I'm down and I'm mentally not well, I have to support the other people around me, because that's what the business world is about. It's about your team. It's about supporting the company you work for. It's about supporting the group that you're in. So I'm in grad school. Even when I don't do well myself, I have to support the others that have done well. So I think that's the biggest thing that I learned. And 100% athletics prepares you mentally for the business world. Like anything that's thrown at me now, I think it's a cakewalk, because swimming beat me down, honestly, in college. So I'm always prepared for the next challenge because I know that I can mentally get through it.
Landon and Finley, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the two common themes from Tolu and Hayley are in large part learning to cope with adversity, and that is a huge deal. I'm sure people on this call have probably heard it from their parents or teachers or coaches. Millennials and Gen Z kids are soft. They don't make them like they used to. They don't know how to deal with adversity. They don't work hard, like whatever. That's people's opinions. I take a lot of pride in bucking that trend, and I don't think I would have, learned how to deal with adverse circumstances and, cope with news that for some people might feel crippling and overbearing, without having learned to deal with defeat and injury. I mean, like Tolu, I had a couple of really bad injuries in college as well, and not being able to be on the field with your teammates and, still having to stay positive and, continue working and gritting your teeth and grinding it out for that long-term vision. Like, that's hard. That's not a skill that the majority of people that you encounter in the world have. And so the more that you all can shape that through your athletic experience, I think it'll really benefit you in the long run.
So we have a question from the panelists or from our attendees that I think would be great for everyone to sort of think about, maybe their top tip or trick. So when you're a student athlete, you're doing all the things a student does, which is going to class, completing homework assignments, preparing for exams, but you're also preparing to take a fitness test, traveling for play, managing team expectations and team meetings. I know for me, we had study halls and team dinners and all the things. So one of the questions that we have is, how do you balance, and maybe some tips and tricks for time management to balance being a student athlete, which requires all those different things? So anybody feel free, maybe Finley, jump in first here if you feel comfortable. Some tips and tricks that help you manage sort of what that looks like from a collegiate standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I will say my first semester freshman year was definitely an adjustment, just getting used to a rigorous academic schedule matched with a Division I sport in season. But past that, once I kind of got my bearings, I would suggest that you leverage the structure of your athletic schedule. I found that having such a regimented schedule from an athletic standpoint actually benefited me from an academic standpoint, because there were literally only so many pockets of time in your day that you could dedicate towards your schoolwork. I found that I was the least structured in my schoolwork my senior spring, because that was when I got to be a college student, because field hockey is a fall sport, and I didn't have to do the off-season training because I was done right with field hockey. So my tip would be to leverage the pockets of time outside of your training schedule, and putting those chips towards your academic needs, because that level of structure actually, I think, is favorable to the athlete.
I think for me, it will be communication. Communication is really key, especially when you're traveling. A lot of these professors know that you're a student athlete, but it's one of those where you still got to send a reminder like, hey, professor, I have a game, I'm coming in Thursday night. I know we have an exam. Just being able to just talk, and then CCing your academic advisor and communicating with your coach too. When you have a test coming up or things like that, you can just say, hey coach, like I have a test, maybe we can move lift earlier. Can I, it's just one of those where I would just have to let them know it's okay to ask for help. That's really a big thing too. And I also use my handy dandy calendar. Hope you guys have that. I usually use a calendar on my phone. We're always on our phone. So basically I put everything that I have in the phone and know what I got and reminders. So set reminders, communication with your advisor, coaches, professors. So that's what got me through.
Yeah, I guess I can add on to that. I think my biggest piece of advice is definitely you have to prioritize and you have to organize yourself, because like Finley said, my first semester, I was all over the place because I hadn't had anything like that. I mean, high school is kind of nothing compared to the schedule that you have in college. I didn't have double practices in high school, so kind of adjusting to that was even a big thing in itself. So I think the biggest thing that helped me was prioritizing and putting that time that I needed to into my schoolwork. Like, so just for example, my Monday classes my Monday practices, we had a 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then a 2 o'clock to about a 4:30. So in the middle of the day, I was in classes, and then I have homework and I have to study for tests. So I always made sure that after practice, I would go and eat, and then I would go to our study center and I would study or do the work that I had to for as long as I needed to, so that I could get it done. You have to cut those times out of your day, because first and foremost, you're in college to get an education. So you can't get clogged and stuck. So you can't get stuck in the athletic mindset. You have to go to class, you have to do your work, and you have to cut that time out so that you do get your degree and that you're eligible to do the sport that you're there for. And I think that's really, really important.
Landon, you unmuted yourself. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I can add on. I think everything that has been said so far is completely valid. I think the only other thing I would add on top is to start with your goals. For me in college, my goals, within athletics, I wanted to be the best receiver that ever came through Davidson College. That was something within my control. I knew I could do it. That goal does not align with getting a 4.0 GPA, given the academic rigor of Davidson. That was the reality. And so I scaled back from that and said, okay, well, what do I think is realistically achievable if I pour everything I have into athletics to meet my athletic goals there, but then also my schoolwork? And, it wasn't to get a 4.0, it was to get, let's say, a 3.5, right? Which is based on what I wanted to do in my career, and in, finding ways to network and speak with coaches and alumni and everything else. That was just kind of the threshold that I needed to get to be able to have the wealth of career options in front of me when my playing days were ultimately over. And so from there, that's where the lessons that Hayley and Finley and Tolu are preaching come into play. It's time management, it's communication, it's prioritization, it's structure and rigidity and everything else. But I do think you have to start with the end goal in mind and be realistic with yourself about what you really want to accomplish and why, and then hold yourself accountable to actually get there.
So we've talked a lot about, in true transparency, how challenging it can be to be a student athlete. It's a big dream of a lot of people. I'd love to shift just a little bit and talk about maybe the most fun experience you had being a student athlete. Maybe you got to see a city, travel somewhere that you didn't get to travel before. That was an opportunity that you got because you were a student athlete. I'd love, for me, I'll share that, like, it was the first time that I flew on a plane that there was no one else on the plane but us. It was like, it felt so fancy and big, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity without being a student athlete. So I would love for you guys to think just, 10, 15 seconds about maybe an experience you had that you got exclusively from being a student athlete. I know that's a tough one. I'm putting you guys on the spot. That's not on the question list we talked about before, but I just love that we've talked a little bit about how challenging it can be, and you got to work hard, you got to manage your time, you got to overcome adversity, you got to have mental toughness, but maybe a fun experience that you had that you got from being a student athlete.
I'll go. It's like you said, that's a lot. But we was able to go to California to play some schools over there. And, California, we don't have any schools in our conference that's on the West Coast. So being able to go on the West Side was really cool. And then we had some times to, just go and explore. I forgot what city we went to, but it was pretty nice. And we got Coach bought us ice. No, Coach did not buy us ice cream. Let me stop. Compliance. Got compliance take the year. But it was good. It was good.
Anybody else, a fun experience you got?
Yeah, I'll add on to that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. I think for me, I did get to travel around up to a bunch of places. Unfortunately, the swim team doesn't have a ton of funding, so we bust a lot of places, so that wasn't very fun. But I think my most memorable experience was definitely, so every year the University of Kentucky takes every single athlete that they have, so around 500 athletes, and kind of brings you on the football field during halftime. And I think that, so they kind of announced, this is this year's like student athletes of the University of Kentucky. And I think it's just a really cool experience because it validates you as an athlete at the university. It points out all the hard work that you put in throughout the year. And it also just kind of shows the impact that you have on that school and on the University of Kentucky. So I think that was just a really awesome experience for me. And it was always something really memorable each year.
You're right, Ashley. We really opened up with a lot of it's very hard to be a student athlete and there's a lot of adversity, but that does not overshadow my total experience. I can't really isolate an experience, but the whole, just being a student athlete in general was such a privilege and such a highlight. And I can't imagine not having, been a part of that team. And sure, workouts and 2-a-days are really hard, but you're in peak condition anyways, because you're playing a collegiate sport, so you can handle it. Traveling with your team, even those 12-hour bus trips because you couldn't afford the flight, it's super fun. And actually, I'll provide a nostalgic highlight. I met my now husband Landon through college sports at Davidson in our sophomore year preseasons. So that was.
I was sure hoping one of you guys was going to say that. I thought you guys were going to leave that out. It was all right.
Brother and sister? What's happening?
That's great.
Yeah, that part was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for me, I agree with Finley. You're living out your dream. I mean, it's playing college sports is an unbelievable privilege. From the team experience to feeling like you have a purpose and a place around campus, to playing in front of crowds, and sports is an amazing thing where you directly go up against people and compete, and you try to come out on top, and you're better than. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to beat people, and that is just not something you can really get anywhere else. And so, yeah, I mean, the whole student athlete experience it's amazing. It's really one of a kind.
And the pride you feel from just wearing a lifting t-shirt that says Davidson Field Hockey, that you're representing this institution. I mean, it's just nothing beats those feelings and sentiments. It's truly amazing.
Also, the feeling of just getting off the bus with your headphones, just walking like you walking in slow motion, like you about to do something, like you LeBron. I was, oh, I miss it. But yeah, I just had to put that. Sorry.
That's great, Tolu. I love it. One question that we have from our students is the recruiting process. So a lot of students don't really understand, and it's changed a lot probably since Finley, Landon, you and I were being recruited, and even since the 5 or 6 years ago and when Hayley and Tolu started to get recruited. So could you talk a little bit about what it looks like to get recruited, and how do you become a collegiate student athlete? In high school, you try out, you make the team, you don't make the team. In college, it looks a little bit different. Could you guys talk a little bit about your recruiting experiences and what that looks like, and maybe what these current students, high school students, might be, what they should expect as they head into their sophomore, junior, senior year of high school?
I wasn't heavily recruited. So I got recruited. I got offered my scholarship through a camp that I just, they said, hey, I'm from Maryland. It was like, hey, let's go to UCF camp. They're doing a camp. So I went there, and I wasn't the best player. I was just working hard. I'm diving on the floor. I'm just working hard. And one of the coaches noticed that, and he pulled me to the office. He's like, yo, how would you like to live in Florida for the next 4 years? I said, where my scholarship at? Let me sign right now without talking to my mom. I say, let me sign right now. But don't do that. Talk to your parents first before you sign. But just saying, you never know who's watching you. It was just me just doing my thing, going out there, working hard, and then I got offered a scholarship at camp. And like I said, I wasn't really heavily recruited. So that's how my experience went. He saw me, he saw what I had, and then offered me, and then I went to the whole recruiting thing and flying out and seeing going through an official visit and everything. So I mean, it's different for everyone. You have people who's going to all these different schools and doing everything and looking at what they have to offer. So it's different, but that's what I would say. You never know who's watching you, so make sure y'all working hard no matter what.
I can kind of add to that. For me, when I was really, really young, so 11, 12, 13, I started getting noticed by coaches just because I was pretty good from a young age. So for me, I think it was my junior year summer, I started getting calls from coaches. I think it was July 1st was the start of the recruiting season and the stuff like that. So when it was my junior year summer, they started calling me and they were like, okay, well, we would love for you to come out on an official visit. So as a high school student athlete, you can get 5 official visits. I think I ended up going on 4. But so my first official visit was Kentucky, and it was in the end of August of my senior year in high school, and it kind of opened my eyes. Basically, you're just a queen when you walk on campus. The student athletes are carrying your bags to the dorm. You sleep in their bed. They're giving you all the food you can get, all the food ever. That you're going to the weight room, they're selling you on everything. They're like, this is our pool, this is our weight room. And it's a really cool experience, but it can be very tiring and it can be really stressful because you're like, oh my gosh, what school do I choose? Or maybe you're not going to get enough scholarship and stuff like that. And that was a big thing for me also. I think the biggest piece of advice and how that goes is I think you need to pick the place that you feel the most at home at and where you could just fit into the team if you walked onto the team that day. And that's kind of how I felt when I walked on Kentucky's campus. I fit with the girls, I fit with the coaches. I loved the campus, and I think it is really, really stressful. I mean, I remember crying because I didn't know if I was going to choose between Tennessee or Kentucky. And I'm happy I did choose Kentucky, but it can be very stressful. But you just have to be smart in your decision and feel at home where you are.
Hayley, you led into another question, and Landon and Finley, I'd love for you to jump in, knowing that you chose the same school, of not only what your recruiting process was like, but also why you ultimately chose to go to which school you chose to. A lot of the students are in high school, you go to the school that you're zoned for, or that you're, whatever the case may be. College is really a big decision, and you can't make a wrong decision. Once you make the decision, it's probably right. But what are some of the steps, or maybe some of the criteria that you went into choosing the college that you went to?
So for me, choosing my recruiting process, I was pretty well recruited. I played at a prominent high school, but also for a pretty good club team. And that was for my sport specifically, you got most of your recruiting interest from your club team and, recruiting tournaments, and then going to the camps over the summers and letting the coaches see you then. So I had a lot of options that ranged from small Division III programs to top 10 Division I programs. So landing on Davidson probably seemed like an odd choice when I had some bigger fish interested in me. But for me personally, I was very interested in playing high-level field hockey in college, and specifically wanted to stay in the Division I arena. But I was also realistic enough to understand that field hockey wasn't going to take me beyond college. So I was not aspiring to be a professional field hockey player. I'm sure most of you are like, is that even a thing? Not really. So I knew I wasn't going to go pro, right? So I wanted to pick the sweet combination of a rigorous Division I program that was also going to enable me to get playing time pretty early on. So for me, that looked like picking a program that, was kind of more middle tier, that would give me more opportunity to excel and get more, time on the field. And as I said earlier, the coach was a huge contributor. I loved my collegiate coach, and she pushed me hard and got me in early. So I only applied to Davidson, and I used the application of the class before me. So I was already into Davidson and committed the summer going into my senior year of high school. That's how sure I was of that choice.
Yeah, my recruiting experience was probably more like Tolu's, where I was not a world-class athlete through my first couple years of high school, and my completely flawed outlook was that if I'm good enough, people will find me. That's true if you are like unbelievably elite, but you still have to maximize your opportunities. So go to camps. Like, don't be afraid that you're not going to be the best player there. There's still, if you're good enough, there still could be a place for you. Leverage your network, whether it's your club coaches, your high school coaches. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think the fear of putting yourself out there like that can be a deterrent in actually using the resources around you. But people want to help. I mean, for example, your high school coaches, your club coaches, when you go on and play in college, that makes them look good. So people want to help you get placed. Taking it a little bit of a different angle, I would also say that focus on your academics, and Tolu's point, focus on your attitude, because you never know who's watching. And I remember sitting down in coaches' offices at Davidson, and we were talking about incoming recruiting classes, and I would watch them mark kids off their list because they didn't have the grades to be able to get in. Great players, Division I caliber players, but who knows how many opportunities they lost or whether they even got to play because they didn't keep their grades up. So not only we get crossed off of lists, I'm sure Hayley, Tolu, Finley, we all know of cases where somebody gets to go play at a school that is probably beyond their capability because they have good grades and they can help the team GPA. But do not overlook your grades when you're getting recruited. As for my process specifically, again, like Tolu, I didn't really send a bunch of tape around. I only went to the camps that we participated in as a high school team. And without that, I probably wouldn't have played. I was fortunate to get noticed at a camp as well. And develop late. This was going into senior year. So in football, I mean, that is, kind of the 11th hour. So for me, I probably didn't open myself up to the largest pool that I could have if I had, followed my own advice at that time. So for me, it was between, a handful of Ivy League schools, Georgetown, Richmond, a lot of just FCS caliber football programs. The reason I ultimately chose Davidson is, to Finley's point, I wanted to play. I wanted to play early. But also I wanted to feel at home. And the feel of the team when you walk onto campus matters a great deal. I remember not to disparage anyone's school, but I remember walking onto, into the locker room at some of the Ivy League schools, and people look at you with the eye like, oh, here's the effing kid that's going to go try to shake my spot. I'll show him. It's toxic. And conversely, I walked onto Davidson and, staying on the sideline for a practice or a game, everybody comes up and says hello and, who are you? Where are you from? What do you want to do? What do you play? Excited to have you. How can we help? That welcoming environment, which a lot of times starts with the coach, is tremendously important, because your college experience, while it will be dominated by sports, it goes far beyond, the actual games themselves. It's the relationships with the team, relationships with the coach, experience in the classroom, on campus, around campus, and so on.
All right, I have two. Thank you guys for sharing. That's great. I have two questions from our attendees before I'm going to turn it over to maybe our last question. But one of the questions that came up were on recruiting, like what age and when should we start looking to attend camps or being recruited? And I know, Hayley, you shared some of the NCAA rules, which you want to go into compliance, so you could probably help us with that. But just really quickly, tell us, like, what is the appropriate age for parents even who might be watching? How old or how young is too young for my kid to start getting recruited or start to go to these camps and be taking these things seriously?
I think swimming's a little different. It's a little later on, just because you really don't, in a lot of sports, you don't really develop until your junior, senior year of high school, because that's when you start growing and really excelling in your sport. I think now the times have been pushed back, and a lot of times you are getting recruited before your junior year of high school. And I think the biggest thing to know is you kind of want to get, if you want to compete at the D1 level or the D2 level, you have to get yourself on those recruiting websites. Like, I think it's just like collegeswimming.com. I had to put myself on there. You have to put yourself on the NCAA eligibility center to make sure you're eligible academically. These things just to kind of prepare yourself are very important, because if your name is not out there, how are the coaches going to know about you? If they're looking into the high recruits and maybe your middle tier, if you're not on these websites, they're not going to know your name and they're not going to be looking at you. And even reaching out to coaches just to kind of get your name in their head is really, really important as well. But a lot of times it's going to be sophomore, junior year when you're really going to kind of get your name in those coaches' eyes.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think a lot of people think that, like, oh, recruiting is like how LeBron got to play in the professional leagues, like, right? Like, I grew up in the Northeast. I got to see LeBron play an AAU tournament. He didn't get recruited. There was no websites he had to sign up for. There was no academic rigor. Like, he's the exception to the rule. The rest of us in this middle tier realm who are playing at maybe a lower D1 level, you get this great opportunity and it looks different, right? Like, Kevin Durant played 1 year at Texas. He didn't have to work hard to get recruited. He wasn't too worried about his grades because he wasn't going to finish school, and everybody knew that, right? So I think it's, for us, sports is an avenue to get your education. And I want to add to one question that we had on here was, how important is it when you're choosing a school that the academics line up with maybe what you want to do? Like, would you choose to go to school to play football, basketball, field hockey, swimming, whatever the case may be, if they didn't have a journalism program or whatever the case may be? And I would love for you guys to jump in. But one thing that I would add is, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you or recruiting you. So as you're thinking about what it looks like to go to a school, and, like, it might sound really fancy that to go to Duke, or sound really great to, go to Oregon and get all the fancy gear. But, like, if you're going to go there and not get the education that you need, you're really going to waste 4 years. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. But what are you going to have accomplished at the end of those 4 or 5 years? So I would love, I think, Landon, you mentioned it, and Finley, you definitely talked about it, that it was really important to you to go to a school that you were going to get, success academically. I think especially for young females, there's very few opportunities for us to play professionally, and we're certainly not making LeBron James money professionally. Even WNBA players, they're not making millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it's important that you get that academic career accomplished. So Finley and Landon, I don't know if you want to jump in there, talk a little bit about, like, how important it was to look at the academics as much as you were looking at the athletic experience.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's hugely important. For me, it was probably my top filter, where if the school didn't have the academic pedigree that I felt was necessary to provide me with a career beyond sports, it wouldn't even be in contemplation. Ultimately, honestly, even if that meant not playing sports. As it relates to specific career programs, this is opinion, not fact, obviously, but I would probably tamp down the importance of specific career tracks. I think a lot of people come into college thinking they know exactly what they want to do, and 2 months in, their career plans are out the window and they start over. Myself being a perfect example of that. So I think I would place the importance on academics. Look, if your family's in journalism, or your family's in law, or whatever, and you have a passion for it, or you have a passion for, education or something like that, allow that to play a component, but also don't get yourself so single track minded that if you do try to change, or you want to change careers, which is completely natural a year or two into college, all of a sudden you're stuck with that option. So I would say probably more important than the individual tracks is the overall academic profile of the school. But I do think it's very, very, very important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Lanny and I speak, I'm with him on the kind of looking at it as a whole as opposed to the individual track, but Davidson is also a liberal arts school, which is a little different than a lot of universities who, offer the opportunity for freshmen to jump straight into a specific track they want to. Whereas as Davidson was required exposure to all kind of general subjects before you could declare your major, and stuff like that was a lot more not basic, but like, divided by English, science, math, and then, individual subjects within. So echoing Landon, the academic filter was definitely top. If the school recruiting me didn't meet the standards that I held for my academic need, then it was no longer an option for me to consider from a playing perspective. I would say, as much as we talk about leveraging what you learned, what I learned on and off the field and applying that to my current career, which, there's a lot to apply. I apply just as much from what I learned in college with a rigorous academic load. I was an English major, and that serves me daily, where I sit right now. So that was, it was definitely important. I don't need to over talk that, but it was a big priority for sure.
I'm going to take one more student. Oh, Hayley, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just going to add something really, really quick. I remember when I walked on campus at Kentucky, like one of the first things they said to me, they were like, you can't do nursing. And I was like, well, why? What if I wanted to do nursing? Like, they were like, no, you can't do nursing. Literally all the labs, everything kind of interferes with practice, and we need you at practice. And I wasn't thinking about doing nursing, but I was like, well, what if I wanted to go into nursing? And I think that's something that you guys really need to think about when you are going on these trips, because I don't think you should ever be barred from a career that you want to go into just for a sport, because sports don't last forever. And I think that's a really important point kind of going into your visits and going to look at schools.
That's great, Hayley, and so true, because so much of what you want to do is, like, I know I joke that, like, I never registered for a class in my entire collegiate career. Like, everyone's like, oh, how did you get your books? And I was like, oh, is that a thing? So it's like, there's also some things that you don't learn from being a student athlete, right? Like, you get your books are delivered to you, you register for classes, somebody registers for you based around your practice schedule. So those are some of the things that, like, you have to learn separately. And Hayley, to your point, you have to advocate for yourself if you want to do certain things that are important to you, that you want to participate in. And that leads to this question that we have from one of our students was, inevitably something comes up that you want to quit, that you're like, oh, maybe this is too much. I kind of want to just do what the regular students are doing. I want to sleep till noon and roll out of bed and go to class, or whatever the case may be. So what, in those moments when you're like, oh, not another practice, I don't want to run another time mile or swim another time mile or whatever, what kept you motivated to keep going and keep pushing? And that question's open to anybody.
For me, it was, yeah, because you'll definitely have those moments where it's just like, what happens if I quit right now? What would coach really do if I don't go to practice? Sometimes you have that feeling in your head, but it's also like, dang, okay, what am I doing this for? And one of the main reasons is for my family and my mother. And my mother worked so hard to, provide for me. So it's just like, okay, the least I could do is just buckle down, is to go to practice and get this degree. So it just think about what you're doing it for, and who you're doing it for. If it's for yourself, good. If it's for your family, great. But just think about, why did I even get, to where I'm at now? That's just my thing.
Yeah, I can add to that, Tolu. I think for me, that happened to me multiple times, just because swimming was very rigorous and it was a lot of hours. But for me, I thought about, how would this decision affect my teammates? Because for me, being a part of the University of Kentucky swim team was an honor, and I loved supporting my teammates and performing for my teammates. And I think I always thought about, how, if I didn't show up to this practice, how would my friend train that day, and how would that affect their time at the end of their season? And I always brought it back to the team, like, why do I want to abandon my team right now? And if I quit right now, how would that affect me academically? Would I lose my scholarship? Like that those are the things you have to think about. You can't just do a split decision, because it affects all the people around you. And I think that kind of echoes off Tolu, but it is very important to think about those things.
So I'm going to bring in a little bit of a contrasting opinion here. I think the decision to stick with sports depends entirely on your goals. And if you have found another passion and you want to go pursue nursing at Kentucky, and you say, hey, nursing at Kentucky is more important to me than swimming, as long as you have a viable way to stay in school and your enrollment isn't 100% dependent on your scholarship, or if you can somehow find an academic grant or another way to stay in, quit. So nobody's making you don't have to be a student athlete. And I would say that there were times when I got frustrated that more people on my football team didn't quit. I wanted them to quit because they were a distraction. They weren't working hard enough. They didn't really want to be there. I think they probably became too reliant on that sense of duty that came in with, just sticking it out or whatever. So I think it 100%, I think it all depends. If you're quitting because it's hard, or you're quitting because, you just got injured and you don't want to go through the rehab, or you're sick of losing, like, to me, that's, excuse the French, that's bullshit. Don't stick it out. Life gets harder than losing a game or pulling a hamstring. And you have to keep your end goal in mind. I will say the relevancy of that to me, I never wanted to quit. I love football. It was more so maybe transferring, because I got sick of losing. And I was like, dude, I'm out of here. Certain people aren't as committed as I am. We had a coaching change my sophomore year, and so I wanted to go somewhere else, play in front of more people. And then it came back to Hayley's point, which is like, you're walking out on your team. Those are your best friends, and those are friends that you will keep around for life. And what does that say about you as a person? That when things get tough or don't go exactly the way that you want, you're just going to up and leave and go do something else. And so I think you have to keep the end goal in mind when you're doing these things, and also take a second to take a step back, assess the situation, and try to understand what's important.
All right, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to give you guys like 15 seconds to think about this. If you could boil all of the wisdom, all of the life lessons, all of the experiences, put it in your backpack, take it back to your 18-year-old self, and you're stepping onto University of Kentucky, University of Central Florida, and Davis's campus for the first time as an 18-year-old, what would you tell that 18-year-old? What would you tell yourself? Like, okay, now you know what all the things that you know, and you could go back to 18-year-old Hayley or 18-year-old Landon. What's the advice? What's one piece of advice you would give that 18-year-old?
Ooh, I have that one. Okay, I mean, obviously I wish I knew it a lot, but I think the biggest piece of advice I would give myself is find your passion outside of swimming. Because for me, I kind of lost myself after my 4 years because I was so indulged in swimming and I was so focused on it. I found obviously a year later, I found something that I'm passionate about, but you have to kind of focus on that and find yourself throughout college. You can't get too caught up in your athletics, but you do have to find that passion somewhere else because athletics does not last forever.
Oh, tough one. Go ahead, Finley.
I'll go next. What I would say to 18-year-old Finley would be to A, toughen up, and B, get over yourself, right? Thick skin will serve you very well, both on and off the field, and learning not to take feedback and even when it feels extra harsh, not take it personally, and getting over myself in that, feeling like this hotshot young recruit, like there are players that will probably be better, stronger, faster than you, smarter, and humbling myself going into Davidson, that's what I would have told myself.
My first piece of advice would have been to cut your hair because you look like an idiot. I had hair that went like down to here, and it just looked so stupid.
People
and the fact that Finley stuck with me is maybe a condemnation of her more than anything. No, I think the number one thing for me is, and it almost for me goes back into the recruiting advice, right? It's don't be afraid to fail. For me as a receiver, find the best corner on the team when you're doing one-on-ones and go against them. And if you get beat, you get beat, but don't wait for the walk-on to go try to look good. You only succeed by surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. So I think for me that probably would have accelerated my development a lot, not just in college but also in high school.
For those in the chat, I found a picture of Landon and his haircut from college. I dropped in the chat.
It's incredible.
And I'm jealous.
It's incredible. Tolu, you want to round us out?
I was like, let me go before. I don't want to round it out. That was tough. I mean, have fun. Hey, we just told you a whole lot of information. And it's so overwhelming especially when your parents drop you off and, they leave and everything. And it's just like, just have fun. Cherish the moments. Enjoy who's around you. Your teammates, like you said, they're going to be the ones where you'll probably keep talking to after y'all finish. Invite them to your wedding, your parties, and everything like that. So, just cherish the moment. Yeah, I guess that's tough question. Oh my God.
I know, sorry. I actually go. We have like 30 seconds left. I'll go, and I would say I know that I'm a little bit older than the students that we're talking to, but I would say write down your experiences and capture it more than just on Instagram, because it really is the time of your life. I think especially as athletes and as people who are striving to succeed, you're always striving for the next thing. Like, I'm going to be better tomorrow. Can't wait till the next game. I can't wait till I'm a junior. I can't wait till I graduate. I used to say I can't wait until I can wear a business suit. I can't wait to be a business lady. I thought that was going to be so great. And now I'm like, I would pay $1 million to be a sophomore in college and kicking the ball around and playing with my teammates, because it's incredible. And not that adulthood isn't great, but it's definitely not college sports, right? So I wish that I had done a better job of sort of capturing those memories so I could look back on them and experiencing and reliving them a little bit. So to Tolu's point, enjoy it, but also try to capture it, because it goes so quickly and you're not going to remember, even though you think you are, what your hair looked like what you should have cut it, or what you thought was really cute outfit. It's not 10 years later. That game that you had the best game of your life, write it down, because you think you're going to remember every moment, but you're not. So that would be my piece of advice. If I could talk to my 18-year-old me who thought I was just the coolest of cool. I wasn't. Horrible genius.
I know we're running over a little bit, but we have to make sure that we put a bow on this. So first and foremost, thank you to Ashley for a wonderful job moderating. Christian, we didn't even need to be here. We just sat back and learned.
I know, man. Y'all were great.
Thank you so much for an amazing panel. I guess a couple of things just to kind of distill before we say goodbye. Brandon Cullen from MADabolic was on a presentation yesterday, and I think you guys talked around it, but I think it's important to note that you are not your sport, right? So 84% of our attendees today want to be college student athletes and think that that's their plan. And at some point that's going to come to an end, and you are not your sport. You are not a swimmer. You're not a field hockey player. You're not a basketball player. You were in college. You were in high school. You're a human being, and what that happens after the fact, I think, is really important and an important thing to distill. Great insights about the college student experience as well. I think important to note as well, the poll talked about the number one thing that students were looking for as they're considering college is, does it have an academic program that interests me, a specific program? And I think it's important to distill that the least important thing was, is university good academically? And the overwhelming thought from the panel is, it's not what you major in, it's where you go, okay? And as a college professor, I think that's important as well. So you don't need to, you're going to change an interest. It's when you're making a college decision, you're making decisions, you are who you hang out with. And if you go to Davidson and people are nice and they treat you with respect, those are the kinds of people you want to hang out with, right? And that's what your brand is going to be once you leave college. It's not exactly what you're going to major in. Most people in our industry, if you're interested in sports business, did not study sports management in undergraduate, including myself. So don't look at it saying, I have to go to the school to have this program. Look at it saying, who am I going to hang out with and what is my brand going to be associated with when I leave college? And that's the most important decision. And lastly, make sure you're interviewing them. I think that was what I love so much about you guys, is you've all gone through this experience. You've all picked the college. You've all become student athletes. All of our attendees want to do the same thing. So you guys really showed them how to walk that. And I think that's important too, is interview the university as much as they're interviewing you. Thank you so much for an amazing panel. A couple housekeeping notes for our attendees. We've got locker room chats at 2 p.m. We have a LinkedIn 101 session. If for anybody on the panel may want to get some of that, that's at 3 p.m. And then an all-team meeting at 4 p.m. So we've got a busy afternoon, but can't tell how much we at Sports Biz Camps appreciate Landon and Finley and Hayley and Ashley and Tolu for making an amazing educational experience. Tolu, thanks for bringing the energy.
Anytime.
Thank you all so much. We'll see the rest of the campers this afternoon. Thank you again. Appreciate it,
Thank
Ashley.
you, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.